I just got back from the most amazing trip in the Mentawais where I host a boat trip on the Pelagic with 8 surfers from all around the world. And this is a story about a unique individual called Amy from the UK. She's a mother of 3. Amy said that she was an intermediate surfer. So intermediate has a real big spectrum. There's low intermediate, middle intermediate, whatever that is, and then there's high intermediate. So this one is more, let's just say that she was low intermediate. The thing about the Mentawais is that there's a lot of unknowns, especially coming from the UK for a woman on a boat with a couple of blokes. There's a lot of fear.
I was terrified to come to the Mentawais, which is why I did it. Out of my comfort zone, felt massive imposter syndrome.
So with Amy, what we had to do is work on her imprint. So what her imprint is what you think you can do and what you think you can't do. So she had a lot of I can't, and we had to turn those no's into maybes and then the maybes into yeses. So this is Amy's story on how we got her from pulling out of waves to catching some of the best waves of her life.
I sat on the shoulder, quite a lot off the shoulder, and yeah, when Clayton said about turning the no's to yeses or a maybe, it really switched it up for me. And yeah, when I was saying no to things, I could really, I felt disappointed with myself.
Amy's one of those really upbeat, happy people, and when she gets nervous, she loves to chat. So the problem with chatting is that she often doesn't pay attention to the lineup. So she'd be chatting and she'd drift off where she should be sitting, or she'd be chatting and she wouldn't recognize the sets are going to come. So I was like, all right, Amy, no eye contact. Look at the sea when you chat. It's really important to get information on what's happening. So one of the big things about getting information is that a lot of people see a swell coming and they all start paddling. The problem with that is that where the wave breaks, it leaves a distinct whitewater map. And if you're on the wrong side of the whitewater, you're going to get caught. And if you're on the right side of the whitewater, you're going to make it. So what I needed Amy to do is actually know where she is in the lineup. Some of the big sets just run off into the channel and they never break. And you see so many people see a swell coming, they turn and they paddle for the channel and they never get the waves. So we even had to get Amy to make sure that she paddles towards the foam so that she knew where that whitewater line is to catch the wave, as opposed to turning her back on the wave and paddling towards the shoulder to where she felt safer. Because whenever she paddled to a safe position, she always missed the wave. But whenever she turned to the reef to see where the whitewater was and she was better positioned, she always caught those waves. So that was a huge mental change, making her paddle to what made her uncomfortable, but where she caught waves, as opposed to being comfortable in missing waves. There was one moment in particular where we're on the inside and the better surfers are out the back and a set came through and we were going to get cleaned up, it's inevitable. And she looked at me and I could see like almost tears welling up as we're paddling out. I was like, all right, Amy, just relax. We're going to take this on the head and I just want you to chill out, take a breath and calm down. Slip off your board and just go under the water. So the set came through. We probably got worked for about 1, 2, 3 seconds and she came up, her eyes were huge and she was panicking and I was like, Amy, just relax, you're absolutely fine. And there's a second wave in the set and she's like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen again. And I said, yes, just chill. Went underwater again, it was only about a 3-second. So it wasn't so long, it was a little bit violent. It was like boom, 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 and it was over. And when she came up, she's like, all right, don't move, don't tread, don't jump on your board, just be calm, just breathe. And I said, I was counting, do you know how long you're underwater for? And she said, nope. So I said, 3 seconds. And I said, do you think you could handle a 3-second breath hold? She was like, yeah. So she's like, all right, you're absolutely fine. So I think the imprint that she had in her head about the situation that she saw that was gonna happen was way worse than the reality of the situation, which did actually happen. And then after that, you could physically see her calm down, the tension left her shoulders, the smile came back to her face, and from there on out, she was okay with being caught on the inside. So on day one, I always like to assess the guests that we have on the boat and come up with a bit of a plan or strategy in my head as to what I need to do and who I need to do it with and how I'm going to do it. We also chat to the captain and we try to figure out what kind of waves we need to get for the guests and what they can and can't handle. With Amy and my assessment of her, she sat on the shoulder, paddled wide, missed a lot of waves, and when she got waves, the first spot we went to was the left, and she'd often surf straight towards the reef, or she even sometimes faded even deeper onto the foam. Ooh. So it's kind of like with reef breaks, you never want to ride the wave too long, especially if you're going straight towards the foam. You can literally see rocks just popping up from the drone footage, and it's scary. So I was like, Amy, you got to surf along the wave towards the end of the wave. It's so much safer than what you're doing. The reason why she was doing that is she was worried about catching the wave. She was super worried about the drop. And if she didn't nosedive, which is, by the way, because the board is too big, and if she made the drop, only then did she try to focus on going down the line, which was almost too late. So there's a couple of things that we wanted to do strategy-wise to get her to be able to trim and go down the line. The first thing, whenever she popped up, you'd see her posture that looked something like this, because she didn't want to fall. So I had to get her to kind of stand up straight. And it took me a while just to get her to stand up straighter. When you stand up straight, your bones support you. And when you hinge over, you're kind of having to use muscle. So that muscle makes you heavier, which pulls you to the bottom of the wave. The hands pointing low, the head bent over to the one side, was signaling the board to turn. So even though she was going left, her body language is like turn and go right on towards the reef. And everything that she looked at that scared her, that's where she went. So it was kind of like day one, her worst nightmares were all happening. So as the coach, I had to change that imprint in her head and slowly, step by step, start to almost like rehabilitate what she thinks she can and what she thinks she can't do. It is a personal story, but as a coach, you got such a small moment to interject something new, a new pattern into someone, and they don't trust it and they're scared. So when you say something, it's got to be sticky. So my first bit of advice to Amy was, Amy, just look at the wave. It's a beautiful wave. You've traveled halfway around the world. You need to appreciate how beautiful it is. And then when you see it, if you want to go, just say maybe and take a breath. So that calming down, having a look, and then committing made a world of difference in terms of getting rid of the stress. Because she felt like she really had to wind up and paddle. And when you do that, you can't see the wave. And you're thinking about all the things that you need to do, and you worry about all the fear, and then normally stuff goes wrong. But the simple act of having a breath and looking at the line, you're almost enticed to want that wave because it looks so beautiful. So that started to work. Second thing that we needed to do is whenever she stood up, her body language was kind of like head to the side, bum out, legs in different directions, and a lot of stress and anxiety. And she was trying to control the ride, the balance, the lift from the wave, the throwing of the lip, and all these things. And she was doing a real hard job at trying to control all of that because her body was stressed. When she got up, I just asked her to, all right, Amy, when you're on your wave, just crack a smile. But have a look around. Where's the lip? And go, hello lip. Where's down the line? And go, hello shoulder. Where's the foam? And it's like walking into a room, Amy, turn the lights on, and you need to know where everything is. Oh, there's a coffee table, there's a chair, there's lights, there's the door. If you know where stuff is, you are going to feel way more relaxed. So that was a big one, just turning the lights on for her. And she's like, oh, okay, I know where everything is. It's not nearly as scary. Then there's the point in the trip where a really good wave will come. I was like, Amy, go. And she'll paddle over and go, no, 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 I wasn't ready. And I'm like, oh, Amy, you're missing some of the best waves of your life. You need to just turn, have a look and say maybe, and browse it, and if you like it, go. So a few more came through and she was like, no, non-committal, non-committal. And then I said, all right, Amy, here's your mantra. You have to say, you, I'm going. All right, so when she did that, I kind of got to see her true character and her true grit. She's like, you, I'm going. And she stood up and she centered and she started to catch some of the best waves. And you could see at the end of the wave, she just flipped off the back and she was just utterly stoked with herself that she pushed herself past that barrier of being out of that comfort zone and getting a wave that just had so much feeling, and she was that stoked with herself. She paddled back, looked like she was a foot off the ground and just absolutely smiling. And the imprint had changed where she went from, I can't do this, to like, you, I'm going and I can do it. That was a massive turning point in the trip. Amy never wanted to engage in sitting with the crowd because she couldn't duck dive. And whenever she tried to duck dive, she got washed back. If a wave came through, she'd rather paddle onto the shoulder and almost want to get in someone's way rather than having to get smashed by the foam. And she didn't want to do that either, get in someone's way, so therefore she just tried to sit clear of the crowd. But when I put her onto a smaller board, she could spin around, she could duck dive, she could get through the back. She was a lot more happier sitting in a crowd. And then with the shorter board, it fits the curve of the wave better. So she was starting to take off on bigger, steeper waves, and it handled the drop so much better. But the other amazing thing is that when she was on a wave, her feedback was that she could feel more of the water passing under the board.
It was such a good feeling to feel the sea underneath me and feel what I was doing.
And I think even though she's been surfing for a couple of years, it was probably the first time she could feel the energy of the wave being transferred through the board into her body, and then she could understand when to compress, when to extend. And I think by jumping onto a smaller board, it gave her more sensitivity and helped her to tune into the wave that had been missing for so long. Amy had locked her body up. You'd seen postures of her just bent over the side. So the first thing I said is just stand up, take a breath, relax and do nothing. And then instinctively, when you do nothing, the thing that happens is you start to feel. You could feel the water drawing up, you could feel the water throwing down. And I was like, right, Amy, when you feel that, I want you to start to compress and extend. It's almost like if you had to dance to music. You first listen to the song, and when you get the beat and you get the rhythm, you can start moving to it. So when you catch a wave, stand there, relax and do nothing. You'll look really stylish. And then the one thing, and this works brilliant for women, and it's a bit rude, but the rude stuff's sticky. We call it push the bush. So normally a lot of ladies when they surf, they kind of go like sort of bum out, and it's a bit like that. And it makes the head kind of want to hip hinge, so the back goes like that a lot, and it creates some instability on the board. But when you push the bush, it almost gets a bit of a pelvic tilt to happen, and it makes you way more balanced. It locks the hips, and that kind of gets the knees to start to compress and extend in a nice straight line, which allows the board to go up and down. And when she started to push the bush, she was like, holy crap, I can actually trim along a wave and I can start to make sections that she thought were unmakeable. So the one thing was, here I'm going, and push the bush. And I know it's probably not the things that you'd hear from your normal surf coaches, but in a pressurized situation, the funny or the rude things really tend to be sticky inside of the water. And when you play with that, you're amazed at the success you get. So nearing the end of the trip, Amy was catching great waves but surfing off the wave. And I totally get it. When you start going up and you start looking down, it looks really intimidating and it looks really steep. So she'd have a takeoff, she'd trim, and then ride off the back of the wave. So I was like, Amy, do you realize that if you want to do a top turn, all you got to do is redo the pattern of doing another takeoff? And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, if your takeoff is great and you're picking a much better line, all you've got to do is take a high line and redo the takeoff, and by default, you would do a top turn. So I was like, give it a go. So at first she kind of went up there and she was a bit nervous and she was a little bit scared and anxious because it looks really high and really steep. But when she just tried to do another takeoff, you could actually see the board starting to go top to bottom and top to bottom, showing her that she already knew how to do it. She just hadn't thought about doing it. Made another massive breakthrough for her. On a special day, we're out at Roxy's in the Ments. Another boat had pulled up and we're sharing the lineup. She paddled out on her board and there were new people in the water. It was a bit more crowded. She spent about an hour in the water and she didn't get a single wave. So she was like, ah.
So I sort of turned to the gang and I said, I'm going to go and get my higher volume board so I can catch something. I came up to the boat. Clayton looked at me and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I've come to get a high volume board. With that, he hands me a toothpick and goes, out you go.
I went and grabbed my board off the rack and I gave it to her. My board is a 510, it's 26 litres. And the board that she wanted to ride, I think, was a Parzel Pro at 30 litres. So I gave her the skinny board and I went out with her. And all we did is we concentrated on sitting in the right spot. And I challenged her to pick the right line, to relax, to breathe, to say her mantras, to push the bush, to do top turns and do the takeoff. Her first wave she pulled back, there was no trust. I think she even got barreled while going straight. But again, something clicked, and then you get to see that character where she was like, I want this. And then she took off and she had some absolutely amazing waves. And the thing is, once you have that one moment, that one singular changing of that imprint from I can't to I can, or a no becomes a yes, you can physically see the lights come on and the froth, and she was paddling back absolutely stoked. And then suddenly catching waves wasn't a problem because she wanted waves. She put herself in good positions. She started to surf top to bottom. She even started to bank a few turns, going backwards towards the foam. And she said that the session that she had on my board was the best session she had of the entire trip, because it was the one that allowed her to feel the most. And I think as a coach, it's really rewarding seeing a person go through that phase of change where they go from being really uncomfortable and you make them then comfortable, but you allow them to see the potential in themselves, to change their imprint of who they are. And all you're doing is you're creating a better person. At OMBE, we're fortunate enough to book these boat trips in the Mentawais where we take 8 guests away with us. And it's more than just getting waves, it's about getting to know the people. A lot of the guests, when they come, they always rebook because they have such a great time. And I've seen some guests from other boats who don't have a coach on board, absolutely lost in the lineup, not getting waves. It's scary as hell. And they've paid all this money to be there because in the video, the wave looks amazing, but in reality, it's fast, it's scary, it's powerful, and it could be horrible. But on the guided trips with a coach, the customers get 3 times as many waves. They're getting put in the right spot. They are getting told where to sit, how to surf the waves. And we endeavor to get away from crowds to places where you could catch as many waves as you can and surf the type of waves that you're comfortable with. So if this sounds like a trip for you, hit us up and love to do a trip with you guys.